My 11-year-old daughter begged 3 adults to stop while they cut off the hair she had been growing since her father died. My sister kept filming. My mother said my daughter needed to stop stealing attention from her cousin. By the next morning, they were standing on my porch with legal papers, begging me to stay quiet before the truth destroyed everything they had spent years building. They thought they were protecting a pageant. They had no idea they had just left behind enough evidence to destroy every lie they had ever told. My name is Elowyn Calder, and this is the day I stopped protecting the people who never protected my daughter. Chapter 1. The daughter they always expected to endure. By the time my mother and sister stood outside my front door, asking me to sign away what they had done, my daughter had already asked me a question I would hear in my sleep for months. If I said stop, and they did not stop, does that mean stop only matters when adults want it to? My name is Elowyn Calder, though the people who loved me had always called me Win. I was 38 years old in the spring of 2025, and I lived with my 11-year-old daughter, Maeve, in a modest brick house in Starmount on the south side of Charlotte. To understand why my family believed I would protect their reputation after they failed to protect my child, you have to understand the role I had played since I was old enough to recognize it. I was the daughter who could handle things. My younger sister, Sloane, was the daughter who needed help. My mother repeated those ideas so often that eventually everyone in our family began treating them as facts. I owned Juniper and Thistle Floral Studio on South Boulevard. It was not a large business, and I had never pretended otherwise. We sold fresh arrangements, handmade cards, custom paper goods, and seasonal pieces for schools, community organizations, weddings, and small events around Charlotte. Twice a month, I cleared the long work table near the back window and held art workshops for children. My mother, Belle, called it my little flower shop. She used the same voice people used when describing a child selling lemonade at the end of a driveway. Sloane liked to suggest that my customers supported me because I was a widow. According to her, grief had given me a story people wanted to reward. The truth was less dramatic. I had taken out a business loan, worked 6-day weeks, learned how to negotiate with vendors, and spent years building a reliable client list. No one in my family had paid my rent, covered payroll, or rescued me when the refrigeration unit failed during wedding season. I had learned not to defend myself when Sloane made comments about the studio. Defending myself only encouraged my mother to tell me I was being sensitive. My husband, Declan, used to say silence was not always peace. Sometimes it was simply the quietest way to lose an argument you had never been allowed to have. Declan had been a paramedic with Mecklenburg EMS. He worked night shifts whenever he could because it gave him mornings with Maeve. He made pancakes badly, packed school lunches too carefully, and once spent nearly an entire summer learning how to create a fishtail braid. He practiced on loops of yarn at our kitchen table after work. When Maeve finally trusted him with her hair, he used a wooden-handled comb he had bought during a weekend trip to Asheville. He tied the end of every braid with a narrow blue ribbon. Declan died on September 18, 2021, when a truck lost control and entered an active rescue area on Interstate 485. Maeve was 7 years and 9 months old. For a long time after his death, she could not look at the wooden comb. Then, near the 2nd anniversary, she brought it to me and said she wanted to grow her hair long. She did not say it was for him. She did not need to. By the spring of 2025, her hair reached the middle of her back. She cared for it patiently, and usually wore it loose unless she asked me to attempt one of Declan's braids. Maeve spent most afternoons at the studio after school. She sat at the counter with colored pencils and drew whatever held her attention. Flowers, customers, buildings along South Boulevard, and sometimes her father. She drew Declan from memory because photographs always showed the same expression. Memory let him move. I never posted her drawings without asking. When customers wanted to buy one, we treated it like real work. Some of the money bought art supplies. Some went into a custodial savings account. A smaller amount went into a blue glazed jar she kept on a shelf in our kitchen. That distinction mattered to me. Maeve was my daughter before she was talented, and she would remain my daughter if she never drew another picture. In March, Dr. Celestine Ashford came into Juniper and Thistle to collect arrangements for a Carolina Crown Foundation event. She was 59, elegant without seeming concerned about whether anyone noticed, and had spent years as an art director before becoming the foundation's president. Maeve was drawing Declan that afternoon. Celestine stopped beside the counter and studied the page for so long that Maeve finally looked up. She asked who the man was. Maeve said it was her dad, and that she drew him so she would not forget the small parts. Celestine asked what she meant by small parts. Maeve pointed to the corner of Declan's mouth, then the line between his eyebrows. She said photographs never showed how one side of his smile rose before the other. Celestine bought 3 drawings for $450. She left her business card beside the register and looked through Maeve's portfolio before she walked out. I thought she had simply been kind. I did not know she would remember every page. My mother remembered different things. Belle Calder was 65 and had retired after years as a head nurse. She remembered every pageant Hadley entered, every dress Sloane ordered, and every judge who failed to recognize what Belle called natural star quality. She had never attended one of Maeve's workshops. Sloane was 35 and had left a senior accounting position in August 2023 to build a family content account called The Whitaker Home. It had nearly 47,000 followers, though very few of them interacted with what she posted. Online, Sloane had a perfect kitchen, a perfect marriage, and a perfect daughter. In person, Hadley bit her nails until the skin around them turned red. Hadley was 8, sweet, watchful, and already experienced at measuring her mother's mood. Before pageants, she developed stomach aches. Once, while I helped fasten one of her shoes, she asked whether second place would make her mother sad. Her father, Ethan, managed a parts department for a chain of car dealerships. He worked long hours and trusted Sloane with the family finances because she had been an accountant. Ethan was not cruel. He was absent in the way busy people sometimes convince themselves was temporary. My father, Gideon, was different. He was present, but quiet. He was 68, a retired management accountant who visited my studio every few months and bought flowers he did not need. He always left extra money in the tip jar. He loved me in private. He rarely defended me in public. Declan once told me that private kindness could make loneliness easier, but it could not stop public harm. I remembered that during a family lunch in March. Belle was describing Hadley's latest pageant and said the child had star quality. Gideon mentioned that Maeve had sold 3 drawings to Celestine Ashford. Sloane smiled and said children's art was easier to sell when buyers knew the child had lost her father. Maeve heard her. She did not argue. She simply pulled her sketchbook closer to her chest and lowered her eyes. My mother continued eating. My father stared at his plate. I watched my daughter make herself smaller so the room could remain comfortable. That was the moment I should have understood that the old pattern had already reached her. After lunch, Gideon began coughing. The sound was dry and deep enough that he had to grip the edge of the table. I asked whether he had seen a doctor. Belle answered before he could. She said it was seasonal allergies and told me not to turn everything into a crisis. Gideon looked at me, then looked away. On the drive home, Maeve watched the houses pass outside the window. After several minutes, she asked why Grandma acted like Hadley had to win something, while Maeve had to pretend she did not care about anything. I opened my mouth, but every answer I found sounded like an excuse adults gave children when the truth made them uncomfortable. That evening, Sloane posted a story I did not see because I had muted her account months earlier. Something beautiful is coming for 2 very special cousins. Her neighbor, Rhea Vaughn, saw it and saved a screenshot. The next day, the invitation to Hadley's birthday appeared in the family group chat. A few minutes later, Sloan sent me a private message. "Bring Maeve early. We need her for one small surprise." I read it twice, then a third time. In 8 years, my sister had never needed Maeve for anything. Chapter 2. The Makeover. No one had permission to give. The answer came 10 days later, though I did not understand it at the time. On April 1st, the Carolina Crown Foundation announced a new category called the Miracle Makeover Community Ambassador. The program was designed to reward young pageant contestants who could lead what the foundation called a meaningful transformation project. Each contestant had to choose another person, obtain written consent from a parent or legal guardian, document the person before and after the makeover, and submit a 90-second video about confidence and kindness. The winner would receive $12,000 in a scholarship trust and a 1-year ambassador contract. Sloan registered Hadley on April 7th. I learned later that she paid $3,250 for the registration, coaching, and media package. At the time, all I knew was that Sloan had started talking more often about a big opportunity. The Whitaker home was losing momentum. The account still had thousands of followers, but fewer people were commenting, sharing, or clicking the links Sloan posted. An agency in Atlanta had apparently told her that polished family content was no longer enough. They wanted something real, something emotional, something people would remember. Sloan decided Maeve could give them that. She called the project Cousin Confidence Makeover. In her first pitch, she described my daughter as a grieving child who had become trapped in the past. She wrote that Maeve kept her hair long because she could not let go of her father and needed Hadley to help her discover a new version of herself. Sloan planned to film Maeve's hair as the before image, let Hadley introduce the project, and record the haircut as a surprise transformation. The tears were not a risk. They were part of the plan. She intended to cut them into what the agency called an emotional reveal. The shorter version would go to Carolina Crown. The longer version would appear on the Whitaker home. There was another commercial purpose hidden behind it, but I would not discover that until after the damage was done. On April 17th, Sloan created a Google Voice number and attached my profile photo to it. She used that number to contact Jolene Mercer, a 53-year-old cosmetologist who rented a booth at Magnolia Row. Sloan sent Jolene messages pretending to be me. She attached an electronic consent form with my name typed at the bottom and explained that the haircut was supposed to be a surprise. She also warned Jolene that Maeve might resist once the camera started. According to Sloan, Maeve sometimes performed her emotions when she knew adults were watching. Jolene accepted $325. She never called my actual number. She never asked to speak to me directly. Sloan also told Belle enough of the plan to make her useful. She said I would overreact if I knew beforehand. Belle agreed to keep me occupied in the kitchen while the video was filmed. My mother later insisted she had believed the haircut would help Maeve. She thought Maeve was too attached to Declan's memory. She thought Hadley deserved one day without being compared to her cousin. More than anything, Belle believed I would become angry and then eventually endure it, because that was what I had always done. Hadley was the only person in Sloane's house who seemed to understand that something was wrong before it happened. She heard Sloan practicing the introduction for the video and asked whether Maeve knew about it. Sloan told her the adults had already handled everything. Hadley said she did not want Maeve to cry. Sloan told her emotional reactions made people believe a story. Then she made Hadley repeat a speech about kindness until the child could say it without stumbling. When Hadley forgot the last line, Sloan reminded her how much money the family had spent on this opportunity. The night before the birthday party, Maeve carried the wooden comb into my bedroom. She asked me to braid her hair the way Declan had. I tried 3 times. The first braid became too loose near her neck. The second twisted unevenly. On the 3rd attempt, Maeve looked in the mirror and said it was close enough. She tied the blue ribbon around the end herself. While I gathered the loose strands from the floor, she asked whether her father would have liked Sloane. I told her Declan had always tried to see the best in people. Maeve studied me in the mirror. That was not the same as answering, and we both knew it. She said she wanted the party to be different this time. Hadley had sent her a heart in the family group chat, and Maeve had decided that meant she wanted her there. The next morning, Sloane texted me again and asked us to arrive early. I asked what kind of pictures she needed. She said it was a surprise for Hadley. Something about the message made my shoulders tighten. I remembered Belle accusing me of ruining family occasions by expecting the worst. I remembered every time I had been told that my caution was bitterness and my boundaries were punishment. I told myself we could survive one peaceful afternoon. Sloane's house in Ballantyne had been transformed into an enchanted garden. Fabric flowers climbed the stair railing. Paper butterflies hung from the ceiling. A balloon arch covered half the living room wall. There were already children running through the house when we arrived, though the party had not officially begun. Belle met us at the door. She told Maeve that Hadley needed her for a special surprise. Then I saw the woman standing near the hallway with a rolling case of hair tools. I asked why there was a stylist. Belle smiled and said it was only birthday glam. Before I could ask anything else, Maeve followed her toward the back room. Rhea Vaughn arrived a few minutes later with her daughter, Emery. She glanced down the hallway and asked whether I knew about the cousin makeover. I said I did not. Rhea's expression changed. She said Sloane had mentioned it in the neighborhood group. I started toward the hallway. Belle stepped in front of me carrying a tray of cupcakes and said the catering order was missing 2 platters. She asked me to help her check the kitchen because Sloane was already overwhelmed. I told her I needed to find Maeve first. Belle said Maeve was having fun. Inside the converted office, Maeve sat in a salon chair beneath a ring light. A phone was already recording from a tripod. Hadley stood near the backdrop in a pale green dress, twisting her fingers together. Jolene removed the blue ribbon and began undoing the braid. Maeve asked whether she was going to cut anything. Sloane said it would only be a trim. Jolene gathered the hair near Maeve's shoulder blades. The first cut removed far more than a trim. Maeve jerked forward and tried to rise. Sloane put a hand on her shoulder and pushed her back into the chair. Maeve said, "Stop." She said she did not want it. Jolene froze for a second. Then she looked at Sloane. Sloane reminded her that Maeve had been expected to resist. Jolene made another cut. Hadley whispered that Maeve had said stop. Sloane told her to leave the room if she could not do her part. Maeve said stop again. By then, Jolene's expression had changed. She lowered the scissors, but several more inches were already lying across the floor. In the kitchen, Belle was talking about Sunday dinners. She said Sloane had tried repeatedly to bring the family back together after Declan died, but I had chosen distance. The music from the back room grew louder. I heard something scrape against the floor. Then I heard a sound that was too small to be a scream and too broken to be laughter. I asked where Maeve was. Belle said she was enjoying the surprise. I asked again. Belle began talking about how difficult I had been since losing Declan. I left her in the middle of the sentence. The office door was partly open. Maeve was standing beside the chair. One side of her hair ended near her chin. The other still fell below her shoulder. Nearly 9 inches lay on the floor. The blue ribbon was still tied around the severed braid. Jolene had placed the scissors on the table. Sloane looked at the phone on the tripod and told someone to keep it running. She said this was the real reaction. Maeve looked at me. Her face was wet, but her voice was painfully clear. She asked whether I had told them they could do it. Before I could reach her, she ran past me and out through the back door. Several guests stood when they saw her. Someone asked what had happened. Another woman stepped forward and then stopped when I came outside. Belle followed us into the yard. She looked at Maeve's hair and said that at least Hadley would finally have one day when Maeve was not the first thing everyone noticed. Rhea pulled out her phone. Sloane came through the door with her own camera still recording. Hadley was crying behind her. Sloane told her not to ruin the video. I did not scream. I did not touch my sister. I knelt in front of Maeve and asked whether I could pick her up. She nodded. I carried her toward the driveway. Gideon opened the passenger door for us. His hands were shaking, and a hard cough bent him forward before he could speak. He told me to take care of her. Then he said he should have stopped this before that day. I did not understand what he meant. Not yet. Maeve was silent until we were several miles from Ballantyne. She held the cut braid in both hands and watched the city pass outside the window. Then she asked if saying stop only mattered when grown-ups wanted it to. Chapter 3. The Night. Every lie left a paper trail. I did not answer her right away. I kept both hands on the steering wheel and watched the traffic lights change along Providence Road. Every response that came to mind sounded too small for what had happened. When we reached home, Maeve walked straight to the bathroom and locked the door. I sat on the floor outside it. "Maeve, I am not going to come in unless you ask me to." There was no answer. "I am right here." Several minutes passed before the lock turned. She opened the door only wide enough for me to see one eye and the uneven edge of her hair. "Did you know?" "No." "Did Grandma tell you?" "No." "Did you think something was wrong?" That question hurt more because the answer was not as simple. "Yes." Her face tightened. I could have blamed Sloane. I could have blamed Belle. Both deserved it. But Maeve had asked about me. "I felt something was wrong, and I still took you there because I wanted one peaceful afternoon." She looked down at the cut braid in her hands. I should have listened when something in me said we were not safe. Maeve did not tell me it was okay. I did not ask her to. When she finally let me into the bathroom, I sat beside the tub and explained everything before I did it. "Can I touch the ends?" She nodded once. "Can I wet your hair?" Another nod. "Do you want me to use the wooden comb?" She shook her head, so I used a wide plastic one from the linen closet. Every time she stiffened, I stopped. The damaged side was too uneven for me to fix safely, so I called Tessa Morgan, a stylist who had worked on several weddings for the studio. I told her exactly what had happened before she came. Tessa arrived without a salon cape or a camera. She brought one pair of scissors, a comb, and a folding stool. She sat where Maeve could see her. "I will tell you before I touch your hair," she said. "If you say stop, I stop. You do not need a reason." Maeve studied her for several seconds. "Even if it looks bad? Even if I am in the middle of a cut?" Maeve finally nodded. Tessa shaped the damaged hair into a simple bob. It was not perfectly even because Maeve stopped twice and decided she was finished before Tessa could soften one side. Tessa said that was fine. Maeve kept the severed braid and the blue ribbon. At 8:45 that night, my phone rang. Jolene Mercer's name appeared on the screen. I stepped into the kitchen before answering. Her breathing sounded uneven. "I spoke to my professional liability attorney," she said. "I need to tell you what happened, and I need to send you everything." I did not reassure her. "Start at the beginning." Jolene explained that Sloane had shown her messages from a number carrying my photograph. She had also received an electronic consent form with my name typed at the bottom. "Sloane said Maeve might resist because of the camera," Jolene said. "She said your daughter sometimes performed emotions when adults were watching." "Maeve told you to stop." "I know." "How many times?" There was a pause. "3 that I clearly remember." I pressed my hand against the kitchen counter. "And you kept cutting?" "Yes." Jolene's voice broke, but she did not turn the conversation toward her own fear. I was lied to before I entered that room. Once she said stop, the lie stopped mattering. I should have stopped too. She told me Hadley had begun crying and asking why no one was listening to Maeve. That was when Jolene had finally understood that Sloane's warning about resistance had been designed to make a real refusal look staged. I am reporting myself to the North Carolina Board of Cosmetic Art Examiners tomorrow morning, she said. I am not asking you to help me keep my license. Within 15 minutes, files began arriving. Screenshots from the Google Voice number, the false consent form, a receipt showing Sloane had paid $325, the booth rental schedule, a one-page filming brief. Near the bottom, Sloane had written, "Expect emotional resistance on camera." Another message instructed Jolene to keep working if Maeve cried because the reveal needed to feel authentic. When the messages stopped, I sat in the hallway outside Maeve's room. I could hear her turning beneath the blankets. For the first time that night, I understood that having proof did not make me feel safer. It only gave a shape to what had been done. A few minutes later, Rhea Vaughn called. "I have the video," she said. "I have not posted it or sent it to anyone." "Thank you." "I mean that, Wynne. It is yours. You decide who sees it." Rhea sent the original file. It showed Belle's comment in the yard. It showed Sloane still filming. It showed Hadley crying while her mother told her not to ruin the video. Rhea also told me that Sloane had once posted a Halloween picture of Emery without permission. When I asked her to remove it, she called me a jealous neighborhood mom, Rhea said. I should have realized she did not understand the word permission. Rhea connected me with Naomi Kessler, a civil attorney who handled privacy and commercial likeness cases involving minors. Naomi called shortly after 10. "Do not edit the original video," she said. "Do not rename the file if you can avoid it. Save copies in 2 secure places. Photograph Maeve's hair and scalp, preserve every message, and do not post anything publicly tonight." Can Sloane use the footage? Not lawfully if she does not have valid consent, but we need to stop distribution before we argue about damages. Naomi explained that the facts could involve fraudulent consent, unauthorized commercial use of a minor's likeness, and civil claims connected to the intentional violation of Maeve's bodily autonomy. She did not promise an arrest. She did not promise a quick lawsuit. She gave me steps. That helped more. With Naomi's guidance, I emailed Dr. Celestine Ashford. I attached the false consent, Jolene's preliminary statement, and Rhea's original video. I explained that Maeve had been used in a project connected to Hadley's Carolina Crown application. Celestine called within 20 minutes. "I am suspending the application immediately," she said. "That is not a final ruling. Marin Holt, our safeguarding director, will review the evidence and the board will meet within 48 hours. She also confirmed that Sloane could not submit or release the video while the review was active. Then Celestine became quiet. "There is something else you should know." She forwarded an email dated March 21st. Maeve's portfolio had already been submitted to the Foundation's Arts Committee for consideration as an illustrator for the 2026 fundraising calendar. "This was before today," Celestine said. "Before the haircut, before the complaint, before anyone knew what Sloane planned." I stared at the timestamp. Celestine had seen Maeve's talent before anyone could turn her pain into a reason to notice her. I did not tell Maeve that night. An opportunity was not another decision adults were entitled to make for her. Across town, Ethan came home to find Hadley awake with a stomachache. She asked whether Sloane was going to be arrested. Sloane had locked herself in the bedroom and told him I was creating drama over a haircut. While looking for Hadley's medicine and insurance card, Ethan found a folder in Sloane's work bag. Inside were credit card statements, the pageant invoice, emails from the Atlanta agency, a draft pitch for a children's hair brand, and records showing $8,200 had been withdrawn from Hadley's 529 college savings plan. He checked the family email account and a credit report they had pulled earlier that year. Sloan had accumulated $36,740 in personal credit card debt. Ethan sat beside Hadley on the couch and asked what had happened in the makeover room. Hadley told him Maeve had not known. She said Maeve had asked them to stop. She said she had reminded Sloan, but Sloan told her to smile because they had spent too much money for Hadley to ruin the video. Then Hadley asked him a question. Would Mom still love me if I never did another pageant? Ethan did not know how to answer. Near midnight, my phone rang again. This time the call came from the hospital. Gideon had been admitted after struggling to breathe. He had been stabilized and would remain overnight for observation. His voice sounded thin when the nurse handed him the phone. I should have told you months ago, he said. About what? I have lung cancer. The room seemed to tilt. He told me he had been diagnosed with stage 2 a lung cancer on February 14th. His doctors were completing the staging process and preparing a treatment plan involving surgery and additional therapy. Belle had convinced him not to tell me. She said you had already been through too much after Declan, he said, and you agreed. Yes. He did not defend himself. Then he told me about the HSA. Gideon had given Belle access so she could manage medical bills. She had taken 3 distributions totaling $6,900. The money had moved through their checking account and been used for Hadley's coaching, entry fee, wardrobe, and media package. He had already removed Belle's access and contacted a tax advisor, an estate attorney, and a financial advisor. Then he sent me a screenshot of a message Belle had written to Sloan. Elowen always survives. Hadley only gets one chance to become someone. I read it twice. My family had never called me strong when strength might have earned me care. They called me strong when they needed permission to leave me alone. By morning, Celestine had formally suspended Hadley's application. Naomi was drafting a cease and desist letter. Ethan had confronted Sloan about the debt and the missing college money. Belle called me 11 times. I answered none of them. Gideon was released shortly before noon after Dr. Malcolm Reeve confirmed that his breathing had stabilized. He had medication, follow-up appointments, and clear instructions not to remain alone. He asked whether he could come to my house instead of returning to Belle. I said yes. A little after 1, my doorbell camera sent an alert. Belle and Sloan were standing on my porch. Sloan held a stack of papers against her chest. A message appeared on my phone. Open the door, sign this, and we can still keep the family together. Chapter 4. The statement they needed me to sign. I called Naomi before I touched the lock. You do not have to let them in, she said. Gideon was resting at my kitchen table with a glass of water and the medication Dr. Reeve had sent home with him. Maeve was upstairs in my bedroom. I had told her who was outside and made it clear she did not need to come down. Belle rang the doorbell again. Sloan lifted the papers toward the camera as if they explained why she deserved entry. I want them to say what they came to say, I told Naomi. I want the document. Keep every page they give you. Do not sign anything. Call me if the conversation changes. I opened the door. Belle entered first. She moved past me with the confidence of someone who still believed my house was an extension of her authority. Sloan followed, holding the papers against her chest. Belle lowered her voice when she saw Gideon. This is a terrible misunderstanding, she said. A surprise was handled badly. That is all. Gideon did not answer. Belle looked at me. This is a private family matter. It should not destroy 2 families. Sloane placed the papers on the kitchen table. The title read, Mutual Non-Disparagement and Misunderstanding Statement. I turned the first page. It said, no adult had intended to harm a child. It said, I had known Maeve would participate in a makeover activity. It said Maeve had reacted more strongly than anyone expected. The final section said, neither side would speak publicly, contact sponsors, or interfere with the Carolina Crown Review. I set the papers down. Where in this statement does it say Maeve told you to stop? Sloane pressed her lips together. The document is about what everyone understood before the party. That was not my question. You are reducing everything to one moment. One moment was enough. Belle pulled out a chair but did not sit. Sloane made a mistake. Jolene made a mistake. You do not need to punish every person connected to this. Sloane began listing what was at stake. Hadley's application had been suspended. The Atlanta agency was threatening to end its contract. Jolene could lose her license. Hadley could lose a scholarship opportunity that might never come again. Not once did she ask how Maeve had slept. Not once did she ask whether my daughter had been able to look in a mirror. They had not come to apologize. They had come because they believed I was still responsible for protecting them from consequences. Belle finally noticed the overnight bag beside Gideon's chair. You need to come home, she said. Gideon looked at her for several seconds. I was home with you for months while you decided Elowyn did not need to know I had cancer. You needed time to understand the diagnosis. You told me she was too fragile to handle it. Belle glanced at me. You had already lost Declan. Gideon turned toward me instead. Do you want me to stay? It was a small question, but it was the first time I could remember him asking what I wanted before choosing the easier path. Yes. Belle's face tightened. The doorbell rang again before she could answer. Ethan stood outside with a document folder under one arm. He looked as if he had not slept. I spoke to Lillian Price this morning, he said after entering. Hadley is with my sister for the day. Sloane agreed to that before she came here. We are working on a temporary parenting arrangement. Sloane stared at him. You had no right to bring our finances here. I had a right to know they existed. He opened the folder and placed several pages on the table. Credit reports, card statements, the 529 withdrawal, agency emails, the draft hair brand pitch. Ethan looked at Sloane. Is $36,740 the full amount? She folded her arms. I invested in Hadley's future. You took money from her college account. I was replacing it when the sponsorship came through. What other debt is there? Sloane looked toward Belle. Belle said Ethan was embarrassing his wife in front of her family. Ethan's voice stayed low. Did you ever look at our daughter without deciding what she could earn for you? Sloane's face changed. You worked 12-hour days and left me to manage everything. You never cared about pageants until you needed a reason to judge me. You are right that I was not paying attention. The admission seemed to surprise her. I should have asked why Hadley was sick before every competition. I should have checked the accounts. I should have been home more. He tapped the folder. But my failure does not make this acceptable. He slid the brand pitch toward me. I read the first paragraph. A grieving girl ready for a fresh start, guided by her confident pageant cousin. The words were clean, polished, and cruel. Sloane had turned Declan's death into an opening line. She had turned Maeve's hair into proof that my daughter was trapped in grief. She had planned to turn Maeve's tears into a reveal and Hadley into the child who saved her. I was creating an inspiring story, Sloane said. Maeve did not need a fresh start. She needed you to stop. For the first time, Sloane had no immediate answer. Gideon reached into the envelope beside his chair and placed 3 HSA distribution records in front of Belle. Her eyes dropped to the totals. "I gave you access because I trusted you," he said. "You used $6,900 meant for medical expenses to pay for coaching, dresses, entry fees, and media packages. The money was used for family." Gideon leaned back slowly, conserving his breath. "Which family?" Belle looked at Sloane. I placed the screenshot of her message beside the transactions. "Elowyn always survives. Hadley only gets one chance to become someone." Belle read it and shook her head. "You have always been stronger than Sloane." "You never called me strong when I needed help. You called me strong when you needed permission to leave me alone." The room went still. Gideon kept his eyes on the table. "I told myself I was keeping the peace," he said. "I made you absorb the war." He looked at me. "I knew she favored Sloane. I tried to make up for it when no one was watching because that cost me less. I let you believe private kindness was enough." His voice weakened. "It was not. I did not tell him I forgave him. I was not ready." "That is the first time you have called it what it was," I said. A floorboard creaked above us. Maeve appeared at the bottom of the stairs carrying her blue-glazed jar. I started to rise. "You do not have to be here." "I know." She walked to Gideon and placed the jar in front of him. "I heard you coughing at Thanksgiving," she said. "I thought maybe medicine cost a lot." There were $336 inside. Gideon covered the jar with one hand. Belle stepped toward Maeve. "Sweetheart, Grandma never meant to hurt you." Maeve looked at her. "Did you hear me say stop?" Belle hesitated. "Everything happened very quickly." "Did you hear me?" Belle looked toward Sloane. "It was confusing." Maeve's voice remained quiet. "It wasn't fast for me." I moved beside her. "Do you want to go upstairs?" She nodded. I walked her to the stairs and waited until she reached the landing. When I returned, Sloane's phone had begun vibrating against the table. It had been doing that for several minutes. She finally picked it up. The email was from Marin Holt. Sloane read silently at first, then her face drained of color. Hadley's application had been canceled. The registration fee would not be returned. Sloane was suspended from acting as a guardian or representative in any Carolina Crown program while the board completed its review. The video could not be submitted, posted, sold, or distributed. The false consent had been referred to legal review. Hadley herself was not permanently banned because the foundation considered her a child acting under adult control. Sloane dropped the phone onto the table. Ethan closed his folder. "Pageant stopped today," he said. "No new posts of Hadley until we have a written agreement. I am separating the finances, and she is starting counseling. You cannot make those decisions alone." "I am not. That is why I called a lawyer." He looked at her without anger. "I am not coming home tonight." Sloane pushed the statement toward me again. "You do not have to destroy everything." I took the cease and desist Naomi had emailed that morning and placed it on top of Sloane's document. "I didn't destroy your life. I stopped holding it together for you." I told them the boundaries plainly. Belle and Sloane were not to contact Maeve directly. Any communication had to come through me or Naomi in writing. They could not use Maeve's name, image, voice, artwork, or story. They were not to appear at my home, the studio, or her school. Any violation would be documented and handled through counsel. Belle stared at me. "You are willing to lose your mother and your sister over hair." "No, I am choosing my daughter because you taught me what happens when a mother doesn't." Belle left first. Sloane followed, taking her unsigned statement and leaving the cease and desist behind. Ethan remained long enough to collect his documents, then walked out without speaking to Sloane. Gideon stayed at the table with his hand resting on Maeve's jar. A few minutes later, an email from Naomi confirmed that the cease and desist had been formally delivered. Directly beneath it was a message from Celestine. The board reviewed the original pitch. There is something else you need to see. Chapter 5. She was never there before picture. The file Celestine sent was 27 pages long. Sloane had not planned one video. She had planned an entire series. The first page showed a photograph of Maeve taken from a private family post. Her hair fell down her back beneath the words before she was ready to let go. The proposed title was Helping a Grieving Child Let Go. The first episode would show the surprise haircut. The second would follow Maeve returning to school with what Sloane called her new confidence. The third would document her finally moving forward from her father's memory. Declan's death had been reduced to 4 polished sentences written to hold an audience's attention. Maeve's tears were listed as the emotional turning point. Hadley was described as the brave cousin who would help another child begin again. I closed the file before reaching the last page. What happened at the party had not been a reckless decision made in a chaotic moment. Sloane had spent weeks planning how to turn my daughter's grief into commercial content. Naomi called before I responded to Celestine. She told me to preserve the original file and not forward it outside the legal chain. She would include it in the evidence preservation notice. I asked what would happen next. She said the first priority was stopping distribution. The second was preventing anyone from deleting evidence. Whether I filed a civil claim could wait until Maeve and I were ready. For the first time since the party, someone gave me permission not to make every decision immediately. The Carolina Crown Foundation Board met on Tuesday. 5 members reviewed the false consent form, Ria's original video, Jolene's statement, the commercial pitch, and the information Ethan had provided about Hadley's involvement. Their decision arrived that afternoon. Hadley's application was canceled. The $3,250 fee would not be refunded. Sloane was barred for 5 years from acting as a guardian, coach, representative, or vendor in any Carolina Crown program. Hadley herself was not banned. The board identified her as a child who had acted under adult pressure. If she ever chose to participate again, she would need another guardian and a new safeguarding review. That distinction mattered to me. Hadley had been used by the same system that harmed Maeve. She had not created it. Naomi's cease and desist required Sloane to stop using Maeve's name, voice, image, artwork, and personal history. She could not release an explanation video that identified my daughter. She could not distribute the footage or erase the original files. She had to contact the agency and the hair brand and demand that every copy be deleted. I did not file a lawsuit that week. I wanted the material contained before I wanted anyone punished. Ria kept the original video private. After Naomi reviewed it, I approved a shortened version for a local child advocacy organization. Maeve's face was blurred, her crying was removed, the damaged hair was never shown. The clip contained Belle's words in the yard, and the image of Sloane continuing to record while Hadley cried behind her. Parents around Charlotte recognized the Whitaker home within hours. Over the next 3 days, Sloane lost roughly 9,000 followers. The Atlanta agency ended its contract and kept the fees she had already paid. The children's hair brand demanded the return of a $2,500 advance. Sloane locked the comments and then hid the account. I did not sit at the kitchen table refreshing her numbers. Naomi sent me only the information that affected Maeve's safety. Jolene reported herself to the North Carolina Board of Cosmetic Art Examiners. She stopped accepting child clients, and Magnolia Row suspended her booth agreement while the complaint was reviewed. A letter arrived for Maeve several days later. Jolene did not ask for forgiveness. She wrote that she had failed at the exact moment an adult was supposed to stop. I placed the sealed envelope in Maeve's desk drawer and told her she could read it whenever she wanted, or never read it at all. She left it unopened. Ethan moved into a 2-bedroom apartment. He and Sloane worked through Lillian Price to create a temporary parenting arrangement. Hadley spent time with both parents, but Pageant stopped immediately, and no new content could be posted about her without a written agreement. Ethan froze large household withdrawals, protected what remained in Hadley's college account, and began listing every debt Sloane had hidden. Their marriage did not end in 1 week. Trust did. Sloane began selling lighting equipment, pageant dresses, furniture, and unopened products she had purchased for content. She also contacted her former accounting firm about contract work. Hadley began counseling. During one session, she told Ethan she could not remember the last pageant she had enjoyed. She had always believed losing meant making her mother sad. Ethan apologized for never asking whether she wanted to compete. A week after the party, he called me and said Hadley wanted to see Maeve. I told him I would ask my daughter. He did not remind me that the girls were family. He did not say Maeve should forgive. That was how I knew he had begun to understand. Maeve missed 2 days of school. Dana Feldman, the school counselor, helped her prepare one sentence for anyone who asked questions. Someone cut my hair without permission. I am not talking about it at school. Maeve practiced it in our kitchen. She asked what to do if people kept asking. I told her she could repeat herself, walk away, or ask Dana for help. On her first day back, another child reached toward her hair without thinking. Maeve flinched so hard that her chair scraped across the classroom floor. She came home early. For several days, she did not draw. I did not place pencils in front of her or remind her that she was talented. Healing was not another performance she owed adults. Gideon continued the staging process with Dr. Malcolm Reeve and prepared for surgery. With help from an estate attorney and financial advisor, he moved $14,000 from savings he had owned before his marriage into a revocable trust for treatment expenses. He named me successor trustee. He stayed with us during parts of his recovery. He did not carry messages from Belle. He did not ask me to soften the boundaries. He did not use his illness to force reconciliation. One morning he found Declan's wooden-handled comb in the bathroom and asked Maeve if he could try to braid her hair. It was too short for the fishtail braid Declan used to make, but Gideon managed 2 uneven twists near the back. One side came loose before breakfast. Maeve wore it to school anyway. Belle continued insisting that everyone had overreacted. Gideon told her she could not contact Maeve, use him to pass messages from Sloane, or interfere with the repayment plan created by their advisors. He said they would discuss the future of their marriage after his treatment stabilized. Belle called it punishment. Gideon called it consequence. 3 weeks after the party, Celestine returned to Juniper and Thistle with a formal contract, 6 illustrations, $7,200 paid in 3 stages, full credit under Maeve's name. The money would go into her custodial account. Maeve could pause or withdraw at any time. No photograph, interview, or personal history could be used without separate consent. Celestine included the original email dated March 21st. Maeve had been selected before the party, before the video, and before anyone knew she would become a victim. I told Maeve she did not have to accept. She studied the sample calendar pages for a long time. Then she said she did not want to draw people yet. I asked what she wanted to draw. She said trees, windows, and flowers, things that could not touch her. Celestine accepted without negotiation. A month after the haircut, Ethan asked again about a meeting. Maeve chose 1 hour at Juniper and Thistle. Hadley arrived wearing jeans and a yellow sweater. There was no pageant makeup, no dress bag, and no camera. She held the blue ribbon in both hands. She explained that she had picked it up after Maeve ran outside and hidden it because she thought Sloane might throw it away. Then she apologized for not continuing to say stop with Maeve. She did not explain that she had been frightened. She did not ask to be forgiven. Maeve took the ribbon and pulled a second chair toward the work table. She asked Hadley if she wanted to draw. They sat beside each other for almost 40 minutes without speaking. No one asked them to smile. No one recorded them. By early July, we held a small art display at the studio. We did not call it a survivor show. There were several older drawings and 2 new pieces. One showed 2 girls beneath the dogwood tree in our yard. Another showed an older man attempting to braid a child's short hair. Celestine bought one. Ria came without taking photographs. Jolene sent flowers, but did not attend because Maeve was not ready to see her. Ethan brought Hadley. Gideon sat near the window, thinner from treatment and tired, but present. Near the end of the afternoon, Maeve placed her first calendar illustration into a simple wooden frame. She picked up a pencil and signed the lower corner. Maeve Calder. There was no name from the Whitaker home, no grieving girl, no before picture, no story written by someone else. For a long time, I believed winning would mean watching Sloane lose the pageant, the agency, her followers, and the control she had mistaken for love. It did not. Winning was Maeve learning that stop was a complete sentence. It was her understanding that her body belonged to her, that her grief was not a product, and that her talent had existed before anyone hurt her. She did not have to become smaller so someone else could shine. Maeve rolled the finished illustration carefully and tied the blue ribbon around it. The studio smelled of fresh flowers and drawing paper. Gideon breathed quietly near the window. Hadley stood beside the work table choosing a colored pencil. Maeve was no longer the before image in anyone else's story. She would decide what came next. Do you think Gideon spoke up too late, or can accountability still begin after years of silence? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you believe protecting a child matters more than protecting a family's image, stay with the channel for more stories about quiet courage, hard boundaries, and women who finally choose the truth.